Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Froe Show. My name is Frank Menken, and I'm joined by my always glorious, always sounding, beautiful and buttery co-host, Joe Murray.
Buttery?
I don't know, I'm going for different adjectives. I say the same thing every week. I thought I might switch it up.
Yeah, I like it.
I feel like I want to rename you to Buttery in a Zoom call, but I feel like that's...
Maybe I will.
Do it.
Oh, man. I'm going to do it.
So, the last two episodes, we were talking about The Shining and Doctor Sleep. We're very proud of those episodes. If you haven't listened to them, please go listen to them. They're super, super fun and super, super good, we think, at least. And if
fun.
you are listening to the audio version, I hope you enjoy just our voices. But if you want to see our faces as we talk, join us on YouTube at The Froe Show on YouTube, where you can find us. And you can see us actually talking. But don't do that if you're driving and in the car, because...
Yes.
That's illegal.
Yeah.
Anyway. So, intro stuff done. Welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been good. It's been a good week. I've had a good week.
It has been a good week. Yeah.
So, at the end of last episode, we almost launched into a whole new discussion, but we ran out of time.
Yes. Yeah.
And Joe asked... well, he didn't ask. He kind of like threw it out there as a general discussion thing. But it was basically like, what is the film and media industry going to look like in 40 years? Which is like super interesting because... I bumped my mic. Which is super interesting because there's so many things that can and will change. So I went ahead and took the liberty of going back in 40-year chunks and going into kind of the 40-year history of film. Which is, and it's not like, I'm not going super in depth. I'm not going to be like, Jaws came out in 1974. And then that was the first time that an animatronic shark was used in a film. Like,
and this was the second time that an animatronic shark was used in
Jaws 2 was the second time an animatronic shark. No, it's just very general stuff. But regardless, it does kind of show how technology has grown and changed in the film. What did you drop?
I just knocked over my...
Oh, you dropped
a little adapter.
I have one of them too. Well,
I didn't drop it. It just fell over.
Oh, well, disgusting.
I'm sorry.
So I have stuff from the 40s, 80s, and the 2010s because I'm gonna count that as I'm gonna count that as present because that's like the movies of the past 10 years. So that's probably gonna be the closest we're gonna get. I didn't really bother going back before the 40s because the 40s is really when films turned into films as we know them, really. Because that's kind of when because before that it was all silent and black and white. So you've still got like the Charlie Chaplin era and that sort of thing, which is still all very interesting. That's like the 20s. But still, like, they're not really... They're films, but they're not films like we know them, you know?
Yeah.
But regardless, that's the 20s, which I don't really have any notes for. But let's jump into the 40s.
Yes.
So, a couple big things happened in the 40s. One of the really, really big ones was sound recording, was the ability to record sound at the same time as you were shooting film. Obviously, a massive, massive leap in technology to go from having cards show up on screen with dialogue to actually being able to hear the actors' voices and being able to actually kind of be there in the moment, which is just awesome. And that also goes for things like having sound for footsteps and movement and ambience and music. Well, music was already a thing, but but just adding all those things kind of just adds that extra level of clarity and yeah, well, like what's the word for that? Like interest, I guess.
Yeah.
I've just seen that you've renamed yourself to Buttery in the Zoom call.
I had to.
Speaking of music, though, pre-1940s, in the silent film era, something really interesting that they did was, because a lot of those films would have music with them, but they didn't send out the music with the film because they couldn't figure out how to play film and music at the same time.
Yeah, right.
So what they ended up doing was actually having physical musicians in theaters when movies played. So they'd have people on pianos just playing music as the film played. So it'd just be whatever the soundtrack to the film would be completely dependent on what the player would do, and that's where you get all those tropes and stuff from, what is it, like a diminished minor chord or whatever it is when a bad guy shows up, where it's like wow, of those all of those precedents come from those musicians and piano players and stuff from the silent film era, which is super interesting. That's not one of the things I had listed, but just something that I remembered. That's all from the top of me noggin.
Smart.
Moving on from sound recording, though, obviously that's a massive feat. The other really big one is color in the 40s. 40s is when color films started happening, and we started getting that. And it wasn't big, it wasn't massive in the 40s. It was kind of an emerging technology still. So it was kind of just getting to the point where people were seeing it occasionally, and it was only really for really, really, really big picture films.
Right.
But that, color didn't really become big until well into the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, okay.
But that's when that technology kind of came around. Other things that really grew and kind of came about is how we use lighting. A lot of the lighting effects we use today in film come about from the 40s, really. Things like Rembrandt lighting, where you get a hot spot on one side of the face and the other side is dark, and you get and you I'll explain this to you, and you'll see it in a bunch of films. It's where one side of their face, it'll be lit from one spot. I should do it the other way so that I'm not blocking the camera. It'll be lit from one side of their face, and it'll be shining at 3/4, and they'll get a triangle just under their eye. Which is super, super interesting, and it kind of gives your character depth. But things like that all kind of originated from directors and stuff looking at paintings and what makes paintings so interesting to look at, and then taking the lighting effects from that and implementing it into film, which is why it's called the Rembrandt lighting effect, because it's from Rembrandt, the painter.
Yeah.
So lighting... special effects were also kind of growing in the 40s, so you were getting things like, and this is more practical effects, so things like explosions, like deaths, blood effects, that sort of thing. That was all kind of slowly starting to become bigger and bigger, and becoming more and more popular. And you're starting to get a bit more experimental with cinematography and camera movement and that sort of thing. You're starting to get things like pans and whips and zooms and that sort of thing, rather than the very static filming of the 20s and 30s. So those are kind of all the big advancements that the 40s brought.
Yeah.
Bringed.
Betrothed.
Betrothed.
Yes.
But one of the really interesting things about the 40s is that the 40s is obviously when is World War II time.
Yeah, it's interesting, the colour and stuff came then when it's, in the middle of World War II.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that being said, most innovation does come through war, because they're forced to innovate and create to survive.
That's fair.
I've got a quote here. I unfortunately don't have the source, but if I find it after, I'll link it in the description of the episode. So, Tinseltown aided in the defense mobilization, whether as combatants, propagandists, documentary, newsreel, or short film makers, educators, fundraisers for relief funds or war bonds, entertainers, or morale boosters. Films took on a more realistic rather than escapist tone, as they had done during the Depression years of the 30s. So, films started to become more and more realistic and more real, more close to home. And they started being used a lot more to make a political point, and to really drive home the point. So you get all those films of like Hitler and that sort of thing, where it's like Hitler's dumb and short and only has one testicle, that sort of thing. That's a real thing. That didn't make that up.
Okay.
That was a propaganda thing.
Wow.
It was a propaganda done by the British, where they wanted to emasculate Hitler. And spread propaganda that Hitler only had one testicle.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Interesting tactics. War tactics.
yeah. War tactics. That's, you know what? That's how you know that World War II was dominated by men, because if there was a single woman in that room, they would have gone, that's not going to work.
No.
But yeah, so a lot of advancements came about through that, and obviously big ones like sound recording were obviously very important. I don't have a lot of information on this, just the very base level that I know about sound recording. But I think what they ended up doing was they, and this is why films started getting black bars at the top and the bottom, is because they would record that would become the left and right channels of the audio. I think it's something along those lines. I'll have to do some more research on it. I'll come back with that next week, because that's a whole nother topic, because it's super interesting.
I'm not. I don't know much about film. The early days of film and sound, I guess. I need to do more research on that, but I know. Yeah, I don't know. Because like it'd be really interesting, because that's a similar time where the phonograph and like records were starting to be made, and they were developing the LP record and things like that. So
yeah.
So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see how different it was from like how they produced that to how they put it with film. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm not exactly sure if that's exactly how they do it, but I do definitely know for a fact that they recorded the sound onto the actual film, which is a really interesting one. And last thing about the 40s, the 1940s, the highest grossing film of the 40s was Pinocchio, which is rather cute, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was...
That's so cool.
From what I remember, I've only got Pinocchio written down here, but number 2 was Gone with the Wind, I think. And then a couple of other ones.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the 40s.
Wow. But this just made me really interested. When did Peter Pan come out?
Which, like the animated one?
Yeah.
Probably around that same time, give or take, because that was the whole animation boom with Disney and that sort of thing. Are you researching?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking. 2003.
No, surely not.
No.
That'd be the remake, right?
1953.
Yeah, right, okay.
53.
That makes more sense.
Yeah.
Right. All right.
There you go.
Let's jump to the 80s.
Yes.
So the 80s is it's hard, because there were massive changes in the 80s. And it was just like I've got a whole bunch of stuff here, but I have a quote. The 80s was action-packed, loud, flashy, simplistic, and tightly structured.
What?
Yeah. So it was big, loud productions that were not as interesting. So the era was characterized by the introduction of high-concept films with cinematic plots that could be easily characterized by 1 or 2 sentences. They became less experimental and original, and more and more formulaic. So that's where you start getting movies like Indiana Jones. Jaws was like the late 70s. You've got like Terminator, that sort of thing. That's all 80s. So I think the original Jurassic Park is also 80s?
Yeah.
Or 90s?
Yeah, I think so. Late 80s?
Jurassic Park. Oh, that's early 90s. But it's that general vibe of very large and larger than life films. That can be that you like. What's the one of the ones that I mentioned before? Like they can just be described in 1 to 2 sentences. Is like the biggest thing, because that was the time where everything needed to be marketed. Everything was much more expensive but cheaper. Like it was more expensive to the people because there was a larger gap between pays, but tickets were cheaper. It was also the decade where ticket prices jumped from $3 to $4. And there was a lot of speculation and stuff about whether this sort of thing was going to kill the film industry, whether it was oversaturated, whether there were too many films being released, and they were becoming too expensive, because the average budget jumped from, I think, 3 million to 18 million in the 80s.
Whoa.
So massive jump. So it was incredibly expensive. The films were becoming incredibly expensive, but were making the same amount of money.
Right.
So that was kind of, people were going in left and right, like, this is how movies are going to die. And then it obviously didn't. I actually have something, I have a picture here. Let me get it open. There's a picture from the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, Conan the Barbarian. No, Conan the Destroyer, sorry. That came out in 1984. And it kind of shows the advancements, I guess, in special effects and technology that the 80s brought. So I'm just going to share the screen here. Boom. There we go. So you can see here, this is how they did the sets in the 80s. So they had, for audio listeners, they've got a miniature propped up on sticks, and then they're kind of shooting through it to kind of put it on top of a mountain range in camera. So there's very little special effects being used here. It's just effective camera angles, and they probably did something to get rid of these poles that are holding it up. But that's sort of how the 80s kind of grew in terms of special effects. Is it was getting a lot more experimental, and things were getting a lot more interesting in terms of special effects.
Yeah, that's really cool. And like Star Wars would have been amongst all that.
Yeah, Star Wars was mid to late 70s. So.
Oh right, because I know we've spoken a lot about how that was all miniatures and things like that. Too.
Yeah, so the late 70s is what kind of brought about that that era of miniatures and using miniatures for sets and that sort of thing. That was like mid to late 70s. But Return of the Jedi, Episode 6, Star Wars Episode 6 came out in 83. So that does kind of give you an idea of the era that we're in, of very large films with big budgets, but that are essentially very simple. Star Wars Episode 6 you can describe as son hates dad, wants kill dad, has laser sword. Like, it's obviously more detailed than that, but that's the gist of it, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the 80s held a lot of advancements in sets and special effects and that sort of thing, and they were getting more experimental with that. So with special effects and stuff, the 80s was the birth of CGI, which is obviously a massive advancement in technology, and that we still use to this day. So the 80s was kind of a weird time because people were getting a lot more experimental with their CGI and their special effects and that sort of thing. But because they were relying so heavily on their CGI and special effects, the cinematography was becoming less and less interesting and less experimental. So where the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s were slowly getting more and more experimental with how they were approaching cinematography and shots and that sort of thing. The 80s was kind of stifling that and kind of stopped it for a little bit. And the highest grossing film of the 80s was Top Gun with Tom Cruise. So very interesting.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings us to the present day and age. And I'm doing it as 2010s, but we'll just say up to 2020 because obviously we don't know what's going to happen in the next 10 years. There's a very high chance that film is going to move in a very different direction, but we'll talk about that. Next because I have a couple interesting things that I think might happen. But what the past 10 years, the 2010s have shown us, is that we're essentially still the same as we have been for the past 40 years. We have the same ideas. Everything's very simple but very flashy. We're very slowly coming into an era again of more experimental media, more interesting films with more complex stories. But if you look at things like the Marvel franchise, which was massive, it's so simple. Like realistically, they're great films. They really are, but they're so simple. And obviously the 2020, my only job is to talk and I'm failing. The 2010s brought about a massive leap in CGI, where rather than looking rubbery and weird and gross, it's starting to become a lot more realistic, which means that rather than being a statement and being used to show and do things that might be impossible to actually do on a set, it's being used to create the impossible from scratch. So you don't even have to do any of it at all. Yeah. That's how you get movies like Avatar, where it's technically all filmed on a soundstage. There's no practical elements in Avatar except for the actors.
Wow.
So that's really the biggest thing that the 2010s have brought. Obviously, also things like 4K, a much higher resolution in films. Camera technology is improving. Home media is becoming a much bigger thing. So things like Netflix, Disney Plus, just general streaming services. Movies are becoming more and more geared towards being able to be consumed in places other than a movie theater, which is a really big one. Yeah. But we are also very slowly moving back towards that very strange and experimental time of the pre-80s, where movies are becoming a lot more original and a lot more interesting. You've got movies like Tenet, which is coming out soon, the new Christopher Nolan film, which is a super interesting concept. Have you seen Tenet?
No, I haven't.
So the trailer came out a couple of days ago. It comes out later this year. It's so interesting. You should really watch the trailer after we finish. But the general concept is that this guy, he can't see the future, but he can reverse the future. So he can see things that that are going to happen as if they will happen, and then can reverse them. So if he goes to shoot a gun, rather than the bullet going out of the gun, it comes back into the gun and he catches the round. That sort of thing.
Wow.
So it's concepts like that are becoming more and more popular, and it's becoming much, much more interesting. And in the 2010s, the highest grossing film was, and you can probably guess, is Star Wars Episode 7, with just shy of $1 billion.
Wow.
Yeah. And then it was Star Wars Episode 7, then Avengers Endgame, then Avatar, I think, is the top 3 highest grossing.
Oh, wow.
So that kind of catches us up to the current day and age. So, Joe.
Yes.
Your question is, in 40 years, what do you think films are going to look like?
I think that made it harder to figure out what they're going to look like. Believe it or not. I don't know. I feel like they're going to head back to the original days a bit more. And I think they're going to get more experimental and more in-depth.
Yeah, right.
Say. More complicated.
Yeah.
In their storyline. Because, at the moment, a lot of them are just, pretty simple. I don't know. Battle at the beginning, and then nothing happened, telling us the backstory, and then a small complication, and then the big final thing, and then so
it's all very similar.
I don't know. Yeah. So I think maybe a bigger variety. I don't know.
And
it's really hard.
Do you think that in 40 years, the way that we watch movies will change again? Like in the vein that we've kind of changed to a more streaming and more home-based media approach. Do you think that'll change again?
I wouldn't be surprised if movie cinemas aren't around in 40 years. Because at the moment, streaming, and it's so cheap. What's Netflix? $10, $12 a month or something
like that.
Yeah. Whereas you go watch a movie in the cinema and it's like $20 a ticket?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if there's no movie theaters in 40 years.
On that, I think movie theaters will definitely still be a thing, but not in the way that we currently have them. Especially considering the world that we're currently in, where social distancing is going to become more and more of a norm. The way that things are now is very likely how things are going to be for a very long time after this is over.
Yeah.
Because people get used to a certain way of living, and that's that. So, in all honesty, I think that in 40 years, you're going to have your home streaming options. And if you want to go see a movie in a theater, I think virtual reality is going to be the place where that becomes very popular.
Yeah.
Currently, VR has a lot of apps that are free, totally free, that are essentially movie theaters, and you can buy tickets to movies, you can go see films. There's other people in the audience that you can talk to and interact with. You can be there with another person. You can buy tickets together. It's the exact same as an actual movie theater, just all entirely virtual. Wow. And I think that once virtual reality is a lot more mainstream and a lot more people kind of pick it up and it becomes more popular and cheaper as well. That's going to become the norm for a lot of media, both watching flat screen media in a movie theater, in a virtual movie theater, as well as entirely VR experiences instead of films. So really being able to live the experience rather than watching it on a screen.
Yeah, that's really cool, actually. I'd be interested to see so in the really late stages of production for a film, when they like putting the sound and the film together, they pretty much get the director and the producers in a room, and it's like a miniature movie theater, and they have this mixing desk that pretty much goes from one side to the other. And there's about, I think I might have mentioned this before, but there's about 4 engineers on the desk, and like each fader, each channel is a different sound or dialogue or music, and then they go through the film. Maybe it takes like a week, scene by scene, and then they, mix out the sound and get it all right. And if the director doesn't like that bit, he's like, "Hold up, can we just go back and get that duck a little bit louder?" Or whatever. So I'd be interested to see if they still do that in that movie theater sort of setup, because they've kind of tried to emulate what it would sound like when it comes out in a theater, and they have the big speakers and everything. But maybe in 40 years, if VR is such a big thing, they'll reference it on headphones. It's kind of weird I think it's kind of weird for if a movie company was like, "Oh, we need to make sure this sounds good on headphones."
But even with the way that streaming and media and that sort of thing is becoming more and more popular, you'd think that would become the norm now as well. Because a movie and this is such a strange example, but it's the one that's being used a lot in a lot of media at the moment, is the new Trolls movie recently.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's called Trolls World Tour or something. Point is, the movie itself makes no difference in this story. The point is, they released it straight to online streaming with no physical release, no theater release, nothing. Straight onto Disney Plus. I think it's Disney Plus. I'm pretty sure it's Disney Plus.
Yeah, I think so.
And have made exactly the same amount that they projected for their theater release. By going straight to streaming. So
wow.
A lot of people are like, is this the end of theater? But I don't think it's going to be the end of physical theaters. I just think it's going to be the beginning of people, of studios in particular, seeing the reality that streaming is just as viable as a physical release.
Yeah, right. And I guess there's things like Netflix original movies and things like that.
Which they're dumping shitloads of money into.
Yeah. Have you seen, I think it's a Netflix original, Extraction with...
I've watched clips.
Chris
I've watched
Hemsworth?
clips of it, yeah. I haven't finished it.
Yeah. Oh, it is awesome. Like, even some of the shots, like cinematography shots in it.
I've only watched one scene. Actually, I've watched 2 scenes. I watched the one with where he's on the car that I showed you a couple episodes ago.
Yeah. Yeah, so I went and watched that, and then, I can tell where that is, and it doesn't go for just 30 seconds. It's like 2 or 3 minutes
it's long.
Him on the front of the car and jumping off, then getting back on. It's like, oh, it's insane. But yeah.
Yeah. I think that will become a lot more normal. Is films going for a straight to streaming release as well as a theater release, because there are always going to be people like you and me that want to watch a movie in theaters. That it will always be a thing, and they will never leave, because it's less of a superior experience and more of it's a different experience. It's more of a personal thing of like, I prefer watching a film this way.
Yeah, right.
But yeah. I think that's really the biggest thing that I could see is studios moving more towards a more home media based approach to movie releases, kind of like what they were wanting to do with DVDs and stuff, but the technology just wasn't really there.
Yeah,
I think that'll be the biggest change. I think the way that movies are going to be done isn't going to change that much. I think we'll get more experimental stuff, but I think the big stuff is going to stay the same.
Yeah, fair.
But yeah.
Yeah, well, with, I guess, going off the streaming and streaming of, Netflix and Disney Plus, streaming in music is now really big as well with Spotify and Apple Music and Google and I think Tidal.
Yeah, we don't talk about Tidal.
Yeah, but that had a massive impact on the music industry as well, because we went from CDs and releasing albums on CDs, and they'd cost what,
like $25,
$20, yeah, $20 each, to now where I release a song on Spotify, and then you get, was it like 0.3 of a cent for each stream. As opposed to, if someone pays $20 for an album CD, you probably getting $5 for that. And that's one buy. So yeah, I'm just trying to get at, like, is that a good thing for the music industry? Like, do you think streaming is good? It was a good thing to come about from CDs, even though it's putting in so much less money. I can't speak.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. A lot less money.
Yeah, there you go. A lot less money than it was before to artists and things like that.
Yeah, I think it's just a different way of monetization, really.
Okay.
Because if you think about the ratio of how many people are going to buy your album and the amount of people that are now able to listen to your music through Spotify, it probably balances each other out pretty nicely, I'd think, at least. And I think in terms of whether one is better than the other, I think Spotify is a lot easier, because someone's going to be willing to play your song on Spotify for free rather than buy your CD and take a chance on it.
Right. Yeah, it's really interesting, because I did a little bit of research, and like I worked out about 1 million streams of a song, you get $4,500 roughly.
Right.
So that's okay. That's fairly decent if you can get 1 million people to listen to it.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I thought at first. 1 million streams, 1 million people, but actually, it's just if you get 250,000 people that really like it.
Yeah, you only have to get 250,000 people to listen to it 4 times.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So it's actually, I think it's pretty good in that sort of sense. A lot of people thought that, oh no, streaming is going to kill the music industry now because there's no money going to artists and things like that.
Yeah, but you get repeat listeners.
Exactly.
Right. So you get paid per listen rather than per what's the word, like individual like new listener.
Yeah. Yeah. And with Spotify now, it's so easy to find new music, especially if you get premium. It's so easy to find.
Discover is the only way I find new music now.
Yeah, exactly. And before, you would have to go into a shop and look around and
ask the guy that works there for his recommendations, and then he'll recommend you some terrible album, and you'll go, "This is not at all what I wanted."
Yeah. So I think it's great for that, finding new music and finding new artists, but unfortunately, it's not as good for like newer artists and sort of niche artists, because they just won't. They don't get enough streams to make anywhere near that much money.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Do you think it changes the way that people kind of create their music?
yeah. It's actually we're seeing a lot less album releases than we used to.
Yeah.
Because artists can make a lot more money from just releasing one at a time than releasing a whole album.
I think we've talked about this off the podcast about how
I think
about how people are releasing a lot more singles because it kind of boosts profit because people are going to listen more to one single than they would to a whole album.
Yeah, exactly. And all the money and time it takes to do an album, and then you sort of put it all up, and yeah, more songs get more listens than others, and you know what it's like listening to an album. Sometimes you don't listen to the whole thing, and then
Yeah, exactly. And the best
2
song
months
might
later,
be the end.
yeah, and 2 months later you could listen to the whole thing, and you're like, oh, this song's actually cool. But
Yeah.
but yeah, going off that, the most streamed song currently is Dance Monkey, I believe.
Of course it is. Of course
Yeah.
it is.
I think it has.
Do you have the other ones? Like what 2 and 3 are?
Oh, I can quickly look it up.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know what 2 and 3 are because surely one of them is Bohemian Rhapsody. Surely.
Oh, I don't know. Most streamed spot.
Because Tones and I is number 1 because she's a trend at the very least. Go for it.
Here we go. Updated weekly. Where is it? Oh, this is of all time. So of all time, it's like Shape of You,
Right.
Rockstar by Post Malone,
Oh,
One Dance
banger.
by Drake,
Yeah.
Closer by Chainsmokers,
Oh, of course, Close is up there.
Thinking Out Loud, Ed Sheeran, Dance Monkey,
Right.
Havana, Perfect, Ed Sheeran. A lot of Ed
Right,
Sheeran
so-
from that album, but
Tones and I is up there.
yeah.
And she's
I think-
fresh out the box.
Yeah.
That's a very
I think
strange way
she's-
of phrasing that.
Out the box.
She's fresh out the box. She's a new and up and coming artist.
Yes. It's a better way than fresh out of the box. But what is it? Was I saying? Oh yeah, Ed Sheeran's up there because of his Divide album that what do you get? All 10 slots on top 10.
Yeah, that was crazy. I
Whatever.
remember that.
Yeah. But yeah, Dance Monkey, I think 50... Is it 50 million? Surely it's not 50 billion. No, it must be 50 million streams.
Yeah, it'd probably be 50 million.
Yeah.
So
but
what's
it's
so
something
that's
crazy.
what's 50 million times 4,500?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's a very. I'm gonna Google it quickly because I don't want to do that mess in my head.
And so that's why streaming now is so good for the artists in the top 1%, the people who are getting 20 million streams plus.
That is $225,000.
Yeah, right.
That's
From one song. That's one song.
And that's just the Spotify streams.
Yeah, that's not including.
That's not including album sales. That's not including CDs or tickets. That's not including streaming from elsewhere. That's not including YouTube streams, which I'm sure is also a lot.
Yep.
That's wild.
YouTube ads and all that sort of stuff. But
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Pretty crazy.
Interesting. Sorry, go for it.
I wanted to talk about where she sort of came from, Tones and I.
That's exactly what I was going to talk about.
Yeah, awesome. Because
I'm gonna launch into a story about Tones and I. So
yeah, go for it.
Tones and I is obviously she's an Australian singer. She is I'm gonna look up quickly where she was. She was born in Victoria. So I had a friend of mine last year tell me a story, and he is I don't know how to describe him. He's like a manager, producer, artist. Like he's just kind of a jack of all trades in terms of music. Music, that sort of thing. So very, very interesting man. Now he has a lot of insight into the music industry, obviously. He worked very closely with Sony for a little bit.
All right.
And he told us a story about Dance Monkey and kind of the reason why Dance Monkey was as popular as it was. So Dance Monkey was released in the late early to mid 2019, I believe. Yeah. It was released on 10th of May 2019. Oh, Joe, we missed the anniversary. We missed the Dance Monkey anniversary. Next year, we'll do 2 years.
Yeah.
But that was very interesting because she was looking for a label because she made the song and was like, no, this is going to be good. And so she released it in 2019. She finished this song at either the end of 2017 or the start of 2018. And she sat on it for a year and a half. And she did so because at the start of 2018, she was searching for a label to obviously release it. And she ended up at Sony's doorstep and was talking to Sony and said, hey, I have this song. And they listened to it and they were like, all right, we want to sign you. But we don't want to make it public yet. And she was like, oh, that's weird. And she said, I have this song. I want to release it by mid 2018. And they said, no, don't do that. And he goes on. He went on to tell the story because he was what Sony was doing was they wanted to kind of prep the way for her, so that she could have the best possible launch because they knew that this song was either going to be the start of her career or nothing was going to happen with her career. They just knew that it was one of those moments. And on a separate note that is also related, the ARIA Music Awards. The ARIA Music Awards are very, 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 very sneaky because Australia thinks that it is this all-inclusive, amazing music award ceremony like the Oscars or the Tonys or the Golden Globes, but it's not. It's fucking not. Every single person that has won the ARIA every single year for Best Recording Artist is literally signed by Sony. And guess who is the backer for the ARIAs? Guess who every single person on the ARIA board is? They are all Sony executives. Every single one of them. It is like the head of marketing, the head of this, the head of that. All of them are from Sony.
Wow.
Every single one.
Oh my goodness.
The ARIAs are literally just an awards show to boost Sony music careers. That is it.
Wow.
They will nominate other people. They will have people from other labels be nominated and shown, but they will never, ever, sometimes, but barely ever win. The only time they'll ever win is if they are really like overvoted by other people.
Right.
But, so, wild. He told me that story and I was like, what? But
wow.
They told her to wait because they knew that she couldn't get into the 2018 ARIAs yet because she hasn't had a career yet. So they couldn't really fly that this random girl had been nominated. Yeah. So what they did was they released the song in 2019 while hyping her up all through mid 2018 and early 19 and advertising her and releasing her old music and showing her off and that sort of thing. Building hype around her career, uploading all of those old videos of her doing street performances, that sort of thing. Yeah. Everything to build publicity so that when she drops this song, it becomes massive. She dropped it May 10th. And then what's the ARIAs is at the end of 2019. So the ARIAs is in November. So she dropped it in mid 2019 to get the perfect peak that hits right at the middle of the ARIAs. So it's entirely planned and entirely orchestrated.
That is insane.
It is so wild, and I loved hearing every second of that story.
Yeah.
So just crazy how these music executives know exactly what to do and how to release a song and how to release an album to give it its like peak efficiency, really.
Yeah, wow. That blows my mind.
Yeah, exactly.
I never realized that.
Well, I should say, everything I said is allegedly.
Right.
I have no physical proof, but you can Google it. But allegedly. but you can Google it. There is evidence, but allegedly. There is allegedly evidence.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Just had to cover my ass legally.
Yeah, nice. Because her first big one, Johnny Runaway, was also early 2019. Mm-hmm. So it kind of all just happened.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's good planning and a good understanding of the industry.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to talk about was like how, I don't know, just how that came about and how when you're starting out as an artist, it can be hard to get your music out. But now you just know, just go get signed by Sony.
Get signed by a good label or know what you're doing is basically the two ways of doing it. Because who is it? It's It's I think it's Tyler the Creator. It's in that vein. I'm not sure if it is him, but I think it might be. He's independent, so he doesn't have a label. And that's becoming more and more popular. Is musicians making it big in the music industry without a label?
Yeah, and it's so possible now with Spotify.
Yeah, exactly.
With streaming and YouTube and just how accessible everything is. But with, if you're an aspiring artist or whatever, one thing to note is that Tones and I lived in Melbourne, I think, and then moved up to Byron, and she did heaps of busking. Yeah. And she built a fan base before she ever released anything. Yeah. So I think it's even though it's crazy that she got signed to Sony and then they just absolutely blew up her career. It's important to have a fan base before you think anything's going to go viral.
And that's exactly why they blew up, because Sony knew how to leverage the fan base that she already had.
Yeah, and she did busking 5 days a week or something like that.
You can make good money busking. You can make really, really good money busking. The same friend that I was just talking about literally spent his whole 20s busking.
Really?
Yeah, and he was making 120 to 150k a year. He was like, do not think that people...
Whoa.
He was like, do not think that people that are busking are sad. They have good lives. What you see is an act. They are literally a show.
Yeah, and I've heard plenty of people make $100 an hour just busking, easy.
Yeah, he's a classical violinist.
Oh yeah,
at least he was back then, and his whole thing was that he was looked really raggy and kind of dirty and gross, and then he would whip out this violin and be playing classical music and that sort of thing. It was really nice. It was just so cool. The juxtaposition of the two. You literally did it for 10 years. This is in Queen Street, by the way. This is in Brisbane.
Yeah, I think I might have seen him actually.
Probably not.
Was it a while ago?
This is the 90s, so you were not alive.
No, I was not.
But yeah,
I've seen a few violinists in Queen Street. But yeah, so building a fan base, I think is really important when you're starting out in the creative industry. And she was doing, busking is like a free show, pretty much. Yeah. So she was doing heaps and heaps of free shows. She was ending up having 100 people standing around, easy, watching her. So I think it's really important to put out free stuff when you're in the beginning. But we've had this sort of debate, I guess, a few times about when do you stop putting out free stuff and all that sort of stuff.
I still stand by the fact that whenever you feel like your product is good enough that you're comfortable charging money, that's when you should be charging. Yeah.
Yeah. But building that fan base early on, I think, is really important. And that's why I think she got really big. Not just because of Sony, but just because she had a fan base. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah. I like that story. Yeah. She has a good story. I don't love her music, but her story is really, really interesting. Yeah. Going from that busking life to going what is it? Triple platinum or something stupid? Yeah, insane. Well, going about you don't like her music, what makes a song good in your opinion?
Oh, fuck.
Why? When do you listen to a song, what makes you be like, yeah, I like this song? Is it just catchy or
No, I think personally it's a mixture of things.
Yeah.
It's obviously, it has to be in a genre. Like, I very much enjoy rock and rap genres.
Yeah.
It probably has to be, and that's why Dance Monkey isn't in there, because that's definitely not either of those. And I like, those are the two genres I really listen to. And I like songs that have a good payoff. So ones that have a nice build up, and then that have a really good climax, and then I always like a song that makes me feel good after listening to it.
Okay.
What about you? What, like, I feel like you're going to get a lot more technical with it.
Well, see, I kind of actually sort of set you up for failure with this, because there is kind of a correct question, a correct answer. There's like what makes a song good, and what makes it, I guess, popular for a lot of people. There is kind of a correct answer, which is kind of crazy.
A B A.
Yes. Well, even in that, you said A B A or whatever.
Yeah.
That's repeating sections.
Yeah.
Because you're repeating A and repeating B. They actually say that one of the
That's why everyone loves ABBA.
Nice.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, is repetition. And
Sorry, what was that? Can you repeat that for me?
It's repetition.
That's why everyone loves ABBA. Sorry, carry on.
Oh my goodness. And wait, I just got what you did. That flew straight over my head the first time.
All right, make your point.
Hilarious. So now I've lost my
repetition. You're talking about repetition.
Repetition. Yeah, and that might seem weird because you listen to a song, you're like, this song is too repetitive, and it's boring. But that's why things like 4-chord songs are so popular. Like, almost every pop hit is a 4-chord song because it repeats 4 chords over and over again. That's why songs now have a chorus, and why it's repeated 2 or 3 times. Because repetition and getting to know, your brain getting to know the chord structure and even just the little things, the words in the chorus and things like that, that's what makes your brain be like, oh, this is really cool.
Right.
Yeah.
It's your brain being like, oh, I know this bit, but you just heard it like 20 seconds ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Pretty much.
It's just you tricking your brain into some serotonin. It's It's cheating.
Music industry is cheating. But yeah, repetition. Because I watched this thing, and this guy played a song with no repetition at all. So there wasn't a note, like there wasn't 2 notes played in concession the same, or there wasn't any rhythm that was the same, or anything like that. And he was just playing it on a piano, and it was like, it was worse than, a 3-year-old banging on it sort of thing.
Oh, no.
It was really bad.
So it was really well planned. It was just terrible because your brain doesn't like it.
Yeah. And it was just, they really planned it out, and it was just 0 repetition. So there was no C sharp played twice sort of thing. Things like that.
That's wild. That's crazy that your brain just hears
worst.
that and goes, no, no thank you.
Yeah. Well, it makes you cringe more than like Dance Monkey would make you cringe sort of thing.
Dance Monkey doesn't make me cringe. I just wouldn't willingly listen to it.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. Think of a song that makes you cringe.
Most Taylor Swift songs.
Oh, really?
Most Taylor Swift and most Katy Perry. Like,
Fair.
This is like, post TGIF Katy Perry and post country Taylor Swift. I genuinely can't listen to.
Yeah, like what happened to Taylor Swift? In that
she went pop.
Yeah, but it was like, I don't know, it seemed just like next level pop.
Yeah, I just have issues with like that whole. I just have issues with Taylor Swift. Not like her music's fine and she's fine as a person. I just was forced to listen to it too much as a kid. So.
Oh, right.
It's just like a personal vendetta. Katy Perry, though, I will stand by. I don't like her music.
Really?
Well, it's just her music was so good. Like TGIF is a certified banger, and like Barbie Girl is a banger. No, not Barbie Girl. What's the candy one where she has like candy canes on her boobs? That one. California Dream.
California Girls.
That one. Yeah. All of those bangers. Dark Horse, terrible, disgusting.
Oh, okay.
Repetitive and gross. Everything after that is just dead to me. I think I'm just mad because I like old Katy Perry and new Katy Perry makes me sad.
Yeah, okay. That's fair. Well, I don't think she writes any of her own music.
No, and I think she used to, and I think that's the change.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah. So be your own person. Make your own art.
Yeah.
That's our message. Episode 11, our message is make your own stuff.
No ghostwriters.
No ghostwriters. No Caspers.
Yeah.
You had a quote or something, didn't you? You mentioned that before the show.
Yes. I was gonna save it for the end. I guess we're pretty close to the end.
Do you have something else you want to bring up, and then we can finish with that quote? Because I'm dry. I spent too much time researching my 40s, 80s, and 2000s thing, so I have nothing else to talk about.
Oh no. Let me go through my notes, see if I missed something from the last few weeks. Elevator music. Oh, actually, I got a funny story.
Oh, okay.
About elevator music. Okay.
Oh, wow. Well, look, I'll take it.
Interesting. This is not in my notes, but okay.
All right, go for it.
So, I am in a brass band. I play brass.
Mm-hmm.
I play trombone, as you would know, Frank, but for the listeners who don't.
Yes.
There you go.
You gotta blow and not suck.
I'm just going to move straight past that. So there was a few of us who were asked to go and play down. It was at a law place. Anyway, it was like a big office thing. Mm-hmm. It was a law place. I don't remember what though. And we were asked to go play for a bit in the lobby, and we were collecting money for the salvos. And so we were doing that. We were playing for about an hour. And then just as we're about to leave, we were asked to go up to the like the daycare sort of area, and asked to play a few tunes for them because it was around Christmas. So we were playing Christmas carols, and we were asked to go play Jingle Bells or something like that for them. So we went up, and there's about 5 of us. So there was a trumpet, trombone, a tuba, and a few other like baritone and middle of the band sort of instruments. Mm-hmm. And so we've gone up, we've played, super fun, and then we're on our way back down. And this is where we're in the elevator on our way back down, and we're going down like 5 or 6 floors, so it's taken a while. And the tuba player, the trumpet player starts to play. And the other guys who are in the lift, the other musicians, they're really quite clever, and they have a really good ear. And so the tuba player joins in and gets a really nice bass line, and it's vibing. And then the trombone player joins, and 10 seconds go past, and we have a 5-piece band playing live elevator music in the elevator.
Please tell me someone walked in. Please.
This is where the story gets better. So we're down. We're about 1 floor from the bottom, and it opened. We stop, and we're like, okay, this is our stop. And they're still playing. The doors open, and this is the 2nd floor. There's a lady standing there, and there's 5 of us crammed into this little elevator. She just stands there for a second, looks at us. We just all kind of stop playing. That awkward kind of stop playing? Yeah, like that. Each of us stop at different times, and, it's all awkward. And she's like, I'll just catch the next one. And then the doors close. And then we go back down. But yeah.
Oh, that's great.
So
I'll just catch the next one. She was like, I'm not here for this shit. Oh man, I love it. That's great.
So live elevator music in the elevator.
Beautiful. All right. Do you want to finish up with your quote?
Yeah. So last week I said that I would start. I would find a quote for every week of someone saying something weird that they use for a Foley sound effect in a film. And so I found this one. William Baker is his name. And he said he uses this for like impact sound, like flesh impact sound, so punches and things like that. I know I've spoken a lot about these ones, but I love the way he words this. So he says, I personally like putting things in cooked whole chickens and then beating the chicken with a sledgehammer or other bludgeoning device.
Can I paraphrase that?
Yeah.
Hang on, I'm gonna move away from the microphone for a second.
Oh no. Oh, he's taking his headphones off.
I want to hit a chicken.
Yep.
Is that the vibe?
That's the vibe.
Perfect.
I just read that and that's so funny. I think I just stuff things in a chicken and then smash the heck out of it.
Just smack chickens. Perfect. I love it.
So yeah.
That was a good one. All right. We'll finish it there. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate your presence. If you want to watch us on YouTube, you can find us on the Froe Show on YouTube. Otherwise, leave a review, leave a comment, subscribe to follow, whatever the button says on your podcast app of choice. And we will see you all next week. Joe, do you have any parting words?
Nope. I don't think so.
All right.
See you guys next week.
See you all next week. That was episode 11. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.